Hey everyone, and welcome back. We're diving into the Realme smartphone today.
Based on a review from RechargeMyTopup.com.
Right. And it seems like this phone is making a name for itself, especially in the mid-range market.
Yeah, the review really emphasizes how much it offers for the price.
Especially with the camera and battery life.
Definitely, but like with all phones.
Oh, there are always trade-offs.
For sure.
Yeah.
So let's get into the specifics, shall we?
Absolutely. The Realme 8 boasts a 64MP primary camera.
That sounds impressive, but how does that actually translate to real-world use?
Exactly. Megapixels aren't everything.
Right. You know, it's easy to get caught up in those numbers.
Totally. So what did the review say about the camera's actual performance?
Well, it praised the detail in the shots, but I'm curious about low-light performance.
That's often a weakness for mid-range phones.
Yeah, definitely.
Speaking of potential weaknesses, the Realme 8 has a 6.4-inch Super AMOLED display.
Which is a good thing.
It is, but it's only 60 hertz.
Yeah, that 60 hertz refresh rate could be a deal breaker for some people, especially if they're used to a higher refresh rate.
Right. Like 90 hertz or 120 hertz makes scrolling and animations look so much smoother.
Yeah, it's a noticeable difference.
For sure. But going back to the camera for a second.
Oh yeah, it's not just the 64MP lens.
It's a quad camera setup, actually.
Right. What about those other lenses? What do they bring to the table?
Well, it seems like every phone has multiple cameras these days.
It really does.
In this case, you got an 8MP ultra-wide lens.
Ultra-wide, so that's good for landscapes and group photos, right?
Exactly. And then there's a 2MP macro lens.
Okay, macro. I have to admit, I don't use the macro mode on my phone very often.
Yeah, is that something people really use? It seems like it might be more of a marketing thing.
Maybe. It can be fun for those really detailed close-ups.
Yeah, like insects or flowers, but it's not something everyone needs.
Good point. Moving on from the camera, what about the battery life? The review seemed pretty impressed.
Yeah, the Realme 8 has a 5,000 millihour battery, which is pretty big.
It's a good size. What kind of usage time are we talking about?
The review said it could easily last a full day, even with heavy use.
Sounds promising. But real-world usage can be different.
Of course. Battery life depends on so many things.
Screen brightness, the apps you're using, network connectivity.
All of those things contribute to battery drain.
Right. But starting with a 5,000 millihour battery is a good sign.
Yeah, and it also supports 30W fast charging.
So even if you do need to charge it, it won't take forever.
Nope. The review said you can fully charge it in about an hour.
That's impressive. I do love fast charging.
Me too. It's a lifesaver.
Let's shift gears to the phone's design. The review mentions sleek, but didn't elaborate much.
From the images, it does look modern.
Yeah, what's your take on it?
Looks like they went with a glossy finish.
Which can be a fingerprint magnet?
True, but it does give it that premium look.
And what about colors? Any interesting options there?
Yeah, it comes in cyber silver and cyber black.
Interesting names. It's
Yeah.
giving futuristic.
A little bit, yeah. Speaking of futuristic, or maybe not, one thing missing is 5G.
Yeah, how big of a drawback do you think that is?
Well, that really depends on the person, right?
Sure.
If you're planning on keeping your phone for a few years.
Because 5G networks are becoming more and more common.
Exactly. So for some, the lack of 5G could be a deal breaker.
Yeah, it's definitely something to think about.
Absolutely. But, besides those main features, there are some other interesting details in the review.
Like what? Let's hear about those hidden gems.
Well, for one, the Realme 8 has a dedicated micro SD card slot.
Really? Dedicated. You don't see that very often these days.
Nope. Most phones make you choose between dual SIM and expandable storage.
So who benefits most from a dedicated slot?
Well, I think it would be great for people who travel a lot and need multiple SIM cards.
That makes sense.
Or for anyone who wants expandable storage without giving up dual SIM.
It's all about options. So travelers, photographers who need lots of storage.
Anyone who hates deleting apps to free up space, basically.
Exactly. And you know what else is surprisingly included?
What's that?
A headphone jack.
Oh, yeah. That's becoming a rarity.
It's like a blast from the past.
I know. But some people still really appreciate it.
For sure. Not everyone has gone completely wireless.
And sometimes you just want that simple wired connection.
Absolutely. It's nice to have the option.
Totally. And there's one more thing I wanted to point out.
Okay, what is it?
They've included a super power saving mode.
Ooh, that sounds interesting. Tell me more.
Basically, it extends your battery life when you really need it.
Like when you're about to run out of juice.
Exactly. It limits background processes, dims the screen.
And puts the phone into low power mode to conserve battery?
Yep. It's like a safety net for those low battery emergencies.
That's awesome. We've all been there desperately searching for an outlet.
Oh yeah, totally.
Okay, so we've covered a lot, but it feels like we're just scratching the surface.
There's still a lot more to unpack about the Realme 8.
Definitely. And what's really interesting is how it reflects broader trends in the smartphone market.
Right. It's a good example of what we're seeing in the industry as a whole.
Okay, let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll dive into those bigger trends.
And see where the Realme 8 fits into the big picture.
Sounds good. We'll be right back.
Going through those features, what really stood out to me is
What's that?
how the Realme 8 manages to pack in so much.
Especially for a budget-friendly phone.
Right, like you wouldn't necessarily expect all those features.
Yeah, like that dedicated micro SD slot.
It's a small thing.
It really shows they were thinking about the user.
It does. Especially when so many other phones are ditching expandable storage.
Yeah, totally. But it makes me wonder who really benefits from that the most.
Good question.
Like, is it more appealing to certain types of users?
Maybe. It makes me think of people who use their phones for very specific things.
Oh yeah, like photographers who shoot in RAW and need that extra space.
Exactly. Or people who download tons of movies or music.
For offline listening.
Right. It just shows how a small feature can make a big difference for some people.
Absolutely. And speaking of unexpected features...
The headphone jack.
Yeah, I almost forgot about that.
It's a blast from the past, right?
Seriously. Part of me misses the days when headphone jacks were standard.
Simpler times.
It's just so easy and reliable, No pairing, no worrying about battery life.
You just plug in and go?
Exactly. And I bet it's a relief for people who haven't switched to wireless yet.
Or who just prefer the sound quality of a wired connection.
That's a good point. I think it shows that Realme is trying to appeal to a wide range of users.
Not just those who are chasing the latest and greatest tech.
Right. They're not forgetting about the people who want practicality and value.
Especially in the mid-range market, that's important.
And on that note, they also included a super power saving mode.
Oh yeah, that's a great feature for anyone who's ever been stuck with a dying phone.
Have you ever been in that situation?
Oh, countless times. Like in an airport or something.
The worst. When you need your phone to last just a little bit longer.
It's a lifesaver in those moments.
It really is. So we've talked about all these specific features, but I'm curious.
What about?
How does the Realme 8 reflect the bigger picture, like the overall mid-range smartphone market?
That's a great question. It really shows how competitive the mid-range market has become.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like you have to settle for less anymore.
Exactly. You can get a lot of great features without breaking the bank.
It seems like the gap between mid-range and flagship phones is shrinking.
It is. What do you think is driving that?
I think it's a few things.
Okay.
First, technology is advancing so quickly that components are becoming more affordable.
Right, so manufacturers can pack in more features at lower prices.
Exactly. It's like we're getting flagship level features for mid-range prices.
I know. And there's also just more competition in the market.
True. More brands are fighting for our attention.
So they have to keep innovating and offer better value.
Which is great for us as consumers. But where do you see this trend going? What's the future of the mid-range market?
It's hard to say for sure, but I think we can expect this trend to continue.
So even more advanced features at lower prices.
Exactly. Mid-range phones will probably become even more sophisticated.
And the lines between mid-range and flagship will blur even more.
Potentially, yeah. It'll be interesting to see how manufacturers differentiate themselves.
It's definitely going to be a fascinating space to watch.
Absolutely.
So before we move on to broader smartphone trends, let's wrap up our thoughts on the Realme 8.
Sounds good.
Would you recommend this phone?
It's a tough question because
it depends on the person's needs.
Exactly. But I think it's a really strong option for anyone looking for a solid mid-range phone.
One that doesn't skimp on features.
Right. It does really well in areas like camera performance, battery life, and design.
And all those little extras like the micro SD slot and headphone jack show that...
Realme was really listening to what users want.
They definitely put a lot of thought into it. But of course, the lack of 5G might be a deal breaker for some.
True. If you need to be on the cutting edge of tech,
and you want a future-proof phone,
then the Realme might not be the best choice.
But if you're looking for a well-rounded phone that offers great value,
it's definitely worth considering.
It seems like it's a great option for a certain type of user.
I think so. And it's a great example of how the mid-range market is evolving.
Giving consumers more choices and better value.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've covered the Realme 8 in depth. Now let's shift gears and talk about those broader trends shaping the smartphone market.
Sounds good.
What are some of the key developments you're seeing?
Well, one of the biggest trends, as we mentioned earlier, is the rise of 5G.
Even though the Realme 8 doesn't have it.
Right. But it's becoming more and more mainstream.
With more devices and wider network coverage.
Exactly. It feels like 5G has been on the horizon for a while now.
It has, but it's finally becoming a reality for a lot of people.
It is.
So how do you think 5G will change the smartphone experience?
I think it has the potential to be a game changer.
In what ways?
Well, it will enable faster downloads and uploads.
So everything will be much quicker.
Yes. And it will also lower latency, which is...
the delay between sending a request and getting a response.
Exactly. And that opens up all sorts of possibilities for things like streaming, gaming, even augmented reality.
It's exciting to think about all those possibilities.
It is.
What other trends are you keeping an eye on?
Another big one is the integration of artificial intelligence.
AI.
Yep. We're seeing AI being used in everything from camera features to voice assistants.
I've definitely noticed the impact of AI on smartphone cameras.
It's amazing how AI can make even simple photos look so much better.
Right. It's like having a professional photographer in your pocket.
Exactly. And where else do you think AI will play a role in the future?
That's a good question.
I think it will become even more integrated into the overall user experience.
Like how?
Imagine a phone that learns your habits and preferences.
And then proactively suggests things based on your context.
Exactly. It could make our phones more intuitive and helpful.
That sounds both amazing and a little creepy.
It's a fine line, but the potential benefits are huge.
Okay, so we've got 5G and AI. What else are you excited about?
Well, one trend that I hope will continue to grow is the focus on sustainability.
That's an important one. As consumers become more environmentally conscious.
We're going to see more demand for sustainable smartphones.
Definitely. The tech industry has to start thinking about its environmental impact.
I agree. So how do you think they can make smartphones more sustainable?
Well, they could use recycled materials.
Yes. And reduce electronic waste.
And develop more energy-efficient devices.
And design phones that are more durable and repairable so they last longer.
Right, so people aren't constantly upgrading to the newest model.
Exactly. It's encouraging to see some companies taking steps in that direction.
I think consumers are becoming more aware of these issues and are starting to demand more sustainable products.
I agree. It's not just about having the latest tech anymore.
It's about making responsible choices.
Choices that are good for the planet.
Finding that balance between innovation and responsibility.
Exactly. That's a big challenge for the smartphone industry going forward.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today. From the Realme to those larger trends shaping the market.
It's been a really interesting conversation.
It has. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
I think it's fascinating to see how much the smartphone landscape has changed.
And how fast technology continues to advance.
It really is. The Realme is a great example of how innovation is happening at all price points.
It's a good reminder that while we look to the future, there's a lot happening right now.
Absolutely. And as technology keeps evolving,
it's more important than ever for us to stay informed and engaged.
I agree.
Well, we hope this deep dive has given you a new perspective on the Realme 8.
And the trends shaping the smartphone market.
And the exciting possibilities that lie ahead.
Thanks for joining us.
We'll see you next time. It's pretty amazing to think about how 5G and AI are going to shape the future of smartphones.
I know, right?
But what about even further down the line? Are there any emerging technologies you're watching?
Oh, absolutely.
That could really disrupt the smartphone industry?
Yeah, that's where things get really interesting. 5G and AI are already making waves.
For sure.
But there are some things on the horizon that could completely change what a smartphone even is.
Okay, now you've got my attention. What kind of game changers are we talking about?
One area that's getting a lot of buzz is foldable and flexible displays.
Foldable phones, yeah.
We've seen some early examples.
Right, but the technology still seems pretty early.
It is. But imagine a phone that unfolds into a tablet-sized screen.
Or one that wraps around your wrist like a watch.
Exactly. The possibilities are mind-blowing.
It sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie.
Well, you know, right?
But if they can actually make it work...
it would be huge for portability and functionality.
Totally. It would blur the lines between smartphones, tablets, even wearables.
Right. Another area I'm really interested in is AR and VR.
Augmented reality and virtual reality.
Yep. They've been around for a while, but we haven't seen them fully integrated into smartphones yet.
So what are you envisioning?
Well, imagine your smartphone overlaying digital information onto the real world.
Like real-time directions or product information.
Exactly. Or even interactive gaming experiences.
Or you could slip on a headset and be immersed in a virtual world.
Right. It would be like having a supercomputer in your pocket.
That's incredible. But wouldn't that require some major advancements in technology?
Absolutely. Processing power and battery life are the biggest hurdles.
Because those technologies would use a ton of energy.
They would. But as batteries get better and processors become more efficient,
Those barriers will start to come down.
exactly. So we might be on the verge of smartphones becoming our primary interface with.
Both the physical and digital worlds.
Exactly. And that brings up a lot of questions.
About how these technologies will impact our lives, relationships, our sense of reality even.
It's both exciting and a little bit daunting.
It is. I guess that's always how it is with new technology.
It always pushes us to adapt.
So as we wrap up, it feels like we've gone on quite a journey today.
We have. From a specific phone to the future of the whole industry.
We started with the Realme 8, a great example of innovation in the mid-range market,
Right.
and we ended up talking about technologies that could completely transform our world.
It's been a great conversation.
It really has. And it's a reminder that technology is constantly evolving.
It is. And it's important for all of us to stay informed and engaged.
Absolutely. Well, to our listeners, we hope this deep dive has given you some food for thought.
About the Realme 8, the smartphone market, and the future of technology.
Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.